on Facebook and YouTube right now. Will, my friend, my brother, my brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Yeah, good. I was saying today I'm feeling a bit of anxiety in my body, and I'm not sure exactly why, but just like, sometimes you get that feeling that your heart is just racing a little bit further than the rest of you. I'm having one of
Yeah.
those days today. Yeah, I'm not sure why, but that's okay. I'm just gonna tag you as well in this. So just one second. And I am excited to chat with you today, man, because I think that you have a lot to offer the world, and I feel like I've got to spend enough time with you now to know that you have strong vision and an amazing capacity for creative innovation and an amazing capacity for community care. I absolutely love you, man. And
Oh,
Lily was like, "You got to have Will on." I was like, "Fuck, I got to have Will on, of course." So here we are. Did you know that my middle name is William? My name is
oh
Joshua
no.
William Coleman. So we've got the name
Ah,
connect as well.
do you know what William means?
Please do tell.
So I think it's derivative of was it German Wilhelm? So Will is the will or like resolution to be resolute, and helm is helmet. So resolute protector. A helmet protects your head.
Nice.
Resolute protector is the name of it.
Dude, that's
Well,
fucking cool. That's
one
great.
of
That's
them.
great to know. Thank you so much. I did not know that.
Yeah, and I see
um,
that in you. Cool. Little family.
yeah. So Will is one of the people who lives permanently and an amazing creative directing way at this place called the Lighthouse that we have been living at.
Mm.
And this permaculture farm is full of like really cool. You can hear the animals right now in the background. Really beautiful food forest, really beautiful animals, and it's a whole situation, man. I'd love for you to describe to me kind of like what the lighthouse is and how it came to be.
Yeah. So at the moment, it's a bit of a menagerie. It's 146 acres of land with
Woo.
about 80%, 80% of which is left to bush regen and to nature, and 20% of which is paddocks. We've got about two extensive acres of gardens, which are filled with fruit trees, which range from a 40-year-old avocado tree to plum I just planted yesterday, um, and everything in between: mangoes, papayas, mulberries, uh, cherry guavas, and white sapotes. And there's also a lot of animals here. There's ducks, geese, chickens, donkeys, and
Donkeys.
yeah, all fulfilling a certain function. Um, and we also have, on average, about a dozen people here, dozen and a half. Um, and yeah, that's the details or technicalities, I guess, of the farm. But yeah, it's a beautiful place that a lot of people call home, and um,
I am
it's
here, by the way.
paradise. That's
Yeah,
another way to describe it.
and how did it all come to be? Because I think there's a really cool origin story I'd like to jump into. Like, how did you say, "Fuck it, I not only want to do a farm in a very different way than a lot of people farm, which is this permaculture way, but also for it to turn into a community of people too." I would love to know how that all came to be.
Yeah. So about 7 years ago, my parents lived in Sydney, and they were renting an apartment in Sydney, in Waterloo. And I had just bought a house with a next partner of mine, and at that point, my parents had decided to move out and found something to buy, and they were looking for something in their budget, and unfortunately, with the price of houses in Sydney, the thing that were in their budget, I mean, even after working, 80 years combined together, all they could show for it in Sydney was tiny little house, or shit house in
Certainly not 2 acres of
Sydney.
certainly not 2 acres of actual produce.
No, no, and definitely not. Yeah, this beautiful home in paradise, but yeah, 700 square meter block, and um, you know, probably the highway right next to your fence or something.
Mhm.
So when they told me about this, I kind of thought that's a terrible idea. Thought to myself, that's a terrible idea, without telling them too much, but shook my head and went back home, told that to my partner at a time, and was like, I just can't let them do that to themselves, and to it's a terrible idea. So we started looking on internet. Did the whole scroll for houses for months and months. It's such a great, great pastime actually when you're on your bathroom and scroll for houses. And we're looking for land and farms. And slowly but surely, having conversation with my little bro and having conversation with mum and dad, we're starting the dream start to shape. The idea of having more space, more land, having some space for my brother, having some space for my parents, and for ourselves, having the families together, starting to shape. And at that point, we didn't really know where we were looking, so we kept it completely open. We went all the way from Tasmania all the way to Byron Bay. Um, and one day on Gumtree, we just found this place, and it was like that. Went to visit, didn't even see what was on the property, and we had already shaken hands. We're like, yeah, no, this is it. Uh,
Aren't you happy to find out there was so much infrastructure? Because I'm
yeah,
floored at how much infrastructure there is. There's a big dam, and that dam water goes to all sorts of different points all throughout the property, as well as 4 massive water tanks. Or I think there's more than 4 on the property.
yeah,
Massive rainwater tanks, solar setup. Yeah, it's a crazy cool off-grid setup, man. And yeah, that
yeah.
must have been quite a. If you shook hands beforehand and then found out what you were actually getting, that must have been quite a nice surprise.
Yeah, it was. It's definitely a staggered surprise. And we're still finding out new things every day. There's fruit trees that are still maturing, but that we're hoping to get fruits from this year or the year after that. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's amazing, and that I think that all comes with the idea of permaculture, which is um, trying to do something that is not just linear time. We'll just do one thing and that's it. Something that will just keep on giving in the future, and not just for us, but future generations also. And we're definitely the benefactors of that at the moment, which is beautiful. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't as established as it is today, and there has been some things that need to be done, change the solar panels and the batteries, but I wouldn't change it for the world, that's for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so there's probably lots of viewers who are not totally familiar with permaculture, and I know it's been such a big part of your life. Could you give like an explanation as to what permaculture means?
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. So it's um, it's a concept that was invented by two people, Bill Mollison and David Holmgren. Uh, I think David Holmgren from Victoria and Bill Mollison was from Tassie. He's passed away now, but It's a combination of two words: permanent and agriculture. So permaculture, which has been kind of reshaped over time to permanent culture. Uh, culture, which is a word that involves also agriculture within it. So culture has, you know, needs aspect of agriculture to exist, I guess. So, you know, so that's the gist of it. It's uh, it's a combination uh, uh, of different agricultural techniques and different uh, rules and precedents that, if applied to the land and applied to a community, in theory, supposed to help the people in that community, creates a sense of not only sustainability, so they can sustain themselves over time, but a sense of enriching the land and enriching the community also.
So it's about giving back to the land and making sure that what you plant helps the land as well as the other plants around and
Yeah.
that sort of thing, correct? Yeah.
So there's three major guidelines, which I love because they're actually poly. They're quite simple, which is care for the land, care for the people, and fair share.
Hmm.
And so those are the three main principles that we try to think of before doing taking any decisions. So, um, say you're going to do laundry, um, you know, is does this care for the people? Well, maybe because your clothes stink, so help. So you need to do laundry, care for the people, care for the land. Well, how you do that laundry, is it a short eco turn, or you got to tumble it for 6 hours and have it at 80 degrees? In which case you need to use gas, you need to use all kinds of things, you know. Um, and then fair share. Well, are you using that laundromat just for yourself? Is it Josh Coleman's laundromat and no one else can use it? And then I've got to buy my own laundromat and someone else has to buy one, or can we share? That's so regardless of what you're actually doing, those three things can be kept in mind, which I found really great because it's inclusive, it's open-ended, it's simple, as opposed to esoteric philosophies that claim to help people, but at the same time are so obscure and complicated that like I was thinking maybe equanimity or non-dual philosophy. You're like, okay, there's great concepts that can help people, but it's really hard to wrap your head around those things. Whereas like, does this care for the people? Does this care for land? Is this fair share? Or is there a fair share on this? And
I would love to see those three things applied to spiritual circles and philosophies. It'd be actually pretty fucking cool to see how that would actually shape and change some of those circles as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the one aspect that is really often overlooked is care for the land.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
sorry
a
about
nice
that.
sound. I like it.
Double call. And so those are the three main framework on which we work here, and then there's 12 principles.
You got to care for that person, Will.
Yeah.
I'm just joking, man. Take your time. It's all casual. Speaking of which, we have one comment that came in from Cassandra Yonder. It just says, beautiful, calm vibes. Thanks for posting. I know that Cassandra does work with permaculture as well, so I'm sure this is nice for her to be watching.
Oh, yeah, wonderful. Hey, Cass. So, yeah, those 3 frameworks, and then there's 12 other principles, which are all beautiful and as deep as those 3 frameworks, all of which can actually be really dwelled into. Can let's just say um, creatively use and respond to change, right? So,
Mhm.
say La Nina is coming for a second year now. It's going to keep raining. We can either sit down here and complain about the rain coming and our soggy feet and the fact that there's going to be mud all throughout the house, or you can start planting watercress, kangkong, water chestnut, papaya, and mangoes now, hoping that they'll establish,
Mm.
throughout the wet years. It's a really good time to plant trees now, uh, so they can get established before the next drought. There's heaps of things that can be done,
Did
and
you
that
for an
yeah,
off-grid setup? I suppose that would mean that you're going to have lots of water in your rain tanks, but maybe not as much sun for the solar too. So I guess preparing for that and knowing that water will mean lots of water, though it's like, well, we got all the water we need, but maybe
yeah,
not as much sun. That means you have to prepare differently for how you use energy as well, right?
yeah, exactly. It's all very much situational, and they, it, which keeps us on our feet. It's not so
Mm.
much walking on eggshells, but um, it is doing things depending on the weather, depending on sun, um, and not necessarily. It might be on a very hot sunny day where it's impossible to work. It's 45 degrees outside. Go to the beach.
Mm.
Now's the time to go to the beach.
That's
Definitely not
taking
the
care
time.
of the people.
Yeah, take care of the people, and also take care of the land, because say it's 45 degrees. Uh, you know, things are going pretty slow at that point in the gardens when it's that temperature. Um, if you water too early, um, you might boil and scald the plants. Uh,
Mm.
you want to be patient. You don't want to be planting stuff at that temperature too, because it'll just die. It's one of those times where Polly, hey Polly, shh. Sorry, we've got 5 dogs at the
No,
moment.
it's all a part of it, man. It's perfect. It's literally perfect. All the sounds of the animals. Yeah.
um,
Oh, but
so
that's very. I would have never thought of that. Of course, you can't pour hot water onto plants, so you'd have to wait until the evening or the early morning. Or what's the best way to do
yeah,
that?
early morning, evening. I mean, that's just one example, but in the case of rain, for example, it'd be a perfect time to go sowing seeds, or perfect time to go plant a tree. And it, again, it's trying to work with what the land's telling us. Right now, spring is coming. Perfect time to go seeding. Perfect time to go. Let the mulch kind of crumble and the soils warm up. Get some heat, get some sun on that soil, especially after all that wet rain. Drying out those roots of those trees probably a really good idea. Uh, so that's creatively use and respond to changes. You know, as you said, there's a bit more rain at the moment, less electricity. Maybe um, it is time maybe to just go outside a little bit more, and spend some more time outside, a bit less under the fluoro lights and stuff like this.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
super cool. Now, having a permaculture farm is one thing, but having a community of, as you said, between 10 and 20 people is a whole other thing. How did that come to be? Can you explain what the community situation and how it came to be and what it is now?
yeah. So back where we grew up in France, we lived in an apartment block. There was about 5 levels high, and there was 4 apartments per levels. Um, Turns out we knew every single person in every single apartment, and every 2 or 3 of those, you know, there's say a dozen of those families where had kids about our age, Jeffrey and I's age, and so we grew up in what I can only describe as a community. It's a bit of a disjointed community where we lived stacked up on top of each other, literally taking shits on top of each other, all paying rent to a landlord uh, or to the bank. And, in that sense, financially, we were all separate, but in reality, we were all very much living together. And it's it's interesting because most people wouldn't even think of that as a community. Really, they just live like I lived. Oh yeah, I had an apartment here, but as kids, there was no difference. I guess the finance, the way finances were handled by our parents wasn't really taken into account as much as uh, the way we interacted with the kids, and we could just knock on each other's door the same way we'd knock on your brother's door, like, hey, do you want to come out of your room and go hang out? It was the same thing. We were just all hanging out together. um, so I guess we grew up in community, uh, in some way, urban community, but a community. And I think and Jeffrey and I have been trying to chase that feeling ever since. After moving to Sydney and moving to other places, it all seemed really odd and really weird. The fact that we didn't know our neighbors, the fact that uh, we were living in massive apartment blocks, or for my part, renting out a room in a massive apartment block with flatmates that I didn't know, and that I barely saw, except for when they would come out of their room to make 2-minute noodles. Uh, or, like, so living in Sydney was really hard. It was kind of, oh my gosh, there's so many people. And ultimately, all I can see is people looking for this sense of community. Because otherwise, why would you come and live on top of each other like this? And at the same time, just treating everybody like a stranger. Instead of treating every stranger like a brother or a sister, you're just too proud to recognize that's what you're looking for, is just community, I guess.
That'd be a great message just for the whole world, because a lot of people probably don't even know that about themselves, like that's actually a really profound insight.
Well, how come 55% of the world's population is now in urban, in an urban setting? And I do feel like, it's true, financially there's more jobs, there's more opportunities, but like I think deeply rooted within that is lack of connection, um, and the loss of the cultural insight country living gives us, which is we are all in the same sea here, ocean, and same storm, the same shit storm. How can we help each other out? Uh, there's there's this understanding that if your field fails, then my field might fail too, and how can we stop that from happening? It's not I'll look after my interest and you look after yours, and they're both separate. There's an understanding that there's a connection that the fence is never going to be able to cut. The fences between our properties. Uh, Say the fire doesn't give a fuck about.
It's not like, hey, that's Will's property, that's Jane's property. It just goes through. Yeah, it just rips.
Yeah, so us and Mark, for example, the local neighbor, or Craig, have been discussing what's happening and how we're taking care of our properties, and how we can do the boundaries together. How can I help him with my tractor, and how can he help me with his cat, for example? Uh, so there's an understanding that if the fires come through here, we all lose it.
Mm,
We all lose our farm. So uh, there's no there's no point just holding on to the pot of gold.
mm,
Uh, it's, uh, and I think in an urban situation, what they've managed to do is create those separations everywhere. So you live in a box, you separated from the people that live in the box right next to you and the people that live in the box right next to you. And then we're separated from nature completely, separated from our food, which comes in packages, which individual packages, each cucumber is like individually wrapped, which is so weird. So weird. Uh, but
but it's reflective of the lifestyle that people are living, right? Because it's reflective. It's almost like it's the same thing. Each individual package is like each individual house, right? Like it's the whole thing is,
and
yeah,
minds too.
in
I think
minds, very much so. I just wanted to
yeah,
very quickly, a friend, Iami, came up to say the opposite of addiction is connection. It's so important. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Is it Gabor Mate said that? I think.
He has
Push the
said that, and there's another fellow called Jonas, I believe, who has quite a lot of teachings around that as well. Yeah,
mm.
yeah. Have you been checking out Gabor Mate? Has been hitting the floor the last 3-4 days or week or something like that with all kinds of interviews with about his new book, The Myth of Normal, and
Oh yeah, there's a
it's
few.
powerful, man.
Yeah. I still need to read it, and I still haven't seen the interviews yet. No,
Yeah, powerful, powerful. But
didn't really
so
think.
back to the urban disconnect.
Yeah,
Then something in you must have spurred the idea of saying, "Fuck this! We need people here together."
yeah.
How did
So
this come about?
Jeffrey and I, very much like Jeffrey's got a background in social economics, and I like to think that I had, um, well, I've got a background in education, early childcare teacher, and um, a really acute interest in philosophy. And both of us have had, kind of grew up on Bob Marley and Rage Against the Machine kind of vibes. There's always this, fuck school. We want to go out into nature, and that's been a recurring a recurring thing in our life. And so when we arrived in Sydney, um, there's really this feeling of how do we escape, and um, how do we how do we escape the hamster wheel, and how do we move beyond well survive beyond surviving, uh, which is 9 to 5 and the whole the whole slave trade that's happening, the wage slavery, those concepts have existed 200 years ago. People like Marx were calling, you know, uh, employment wage slavery, which it is. It's a basically fancy word for prostitution. How
Mm.
much can how little can an employee pay their employees for them to give their whole body to them and do whatever menial task they have for them. And so
I got
there's
to
no
say, man, for our Canadian listeners, because this is usually a pretty strong split of Canadian and Australian viewers,
yeah
man, it is even worse in North America. It's fucking crazy, man. They must have really taken that exact motto, how little can we pay people and still have them give their lives to us? They must have just taken that so fucking seriously because, like, I have
yeah
many friends that make $12.50 per hour, and are just able to pay their rent, just able to pay their bills. That's it. That's the end of it. Surviving.
yeah I've been there, and I mean, So it's like there's one point where imagine there's a tyrannical employer in the community, uh, and we keep going there. We keep working for that person. Well, that person's never going to learn the lesson, and
Mm,
also the community is just going to be like, well, my friend's working for him. Why not me working for him too?
mhm,
And at one point, there needs
mm,
to be an employee that says, no, 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 fuck that person. Where I can't, I can't take this anymore. Not only can I take this, but you, and you are better than this, and you owe it to yourself to not enable this employer to keep abusing us. And it might not be an emotional abuse or abuse of power. It might just be, I'm just not paying you enough because I can't afford it. But unfortunately, if we keep going in that direction, pulling we're pulling the expectation of what an employee is able to handle to downwards. We're
mm.
not pulling it upwards for the future generation. We're not making employment easier for our children. We're making it harder to the point where maybe they'll work for $6 instead of $12.50 an hour because you haven't stood up or because at one point in your life you just took the $12 instead of 12.50, and then the
Mhm.
next employer just took 11.30, and the next employee, I mean. So there's one point where we need to say stop and be like, you know what, I'd rather not be paid at all right now than continue the downward spiral towards poor working conditions and continuing the culture of depletion and poverty, mental poverty, and financial impotency.
Yeah, I totally agree. And is that a part of, again, the reason to bring people together? Because we need options, is the other thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that is so okay. So all those concepts were kind of really rolling in our minds at that point. Um, the independence. So I'm working in childcare at that point, and I'm like, this is not working at all. I can't work in this industry anymore. It's making me feel really, really, really bad inside. I'm just crying coming back from work and just not being able to found a solution out of the curriculum and out of the bureaucracy and trying to. So at that point, that's where the nucleus of the community started, where dad, mom, and my brother and I and my ex-partner at the time really get together and discuss. Okay, what do we all want? What do we all want? Mom wants to have a big kitchen.
Which
Jeffrey
you
wants
have.
a garden. Yeah, Jeffrey wants a garden. Dad wants to retire, and um, and I just want to live with my family. I want to be able to see mom and dad grow old and retire and be around them when that happens, and I want them to be around my kids when I do have kids. So as we discussed this, we realized, oh my gosh, wait a minute, none of those are like uh, opposing ideas that can't work within the same reality. Not only do they all work within the same reality, but in some way, shape, or form, we're all looking to stick with each other. And so that moment clicks of like, wait a minute, Jeffrey won't need to buy his own place, and I won't need to buy my own place. Maybe we can actually just, and maybe we don't need to let my parents get a 40-year mortgage for some really shitty house next to a big highway or something. Uh, Maybe we can actually just all churn in together and keep the roll bowling, keep the ball rolling. uh, um, with the community or the family setting that we started building, and I guess that enters in. There's several things that within that, which is the push for capitalism to separate the family unit, um, and having um, as many mortgages as there are people within a family, uh, trying to really double down on the feeling of discontent in the youth, so that they need, or they feel the need to leave and work and be part of, there's a doubling down on the American dream at the moment, especially with the internet and what's been happening with TikTok and all kinds and quick money. A lot of like influencers nowadays are extremely rich and obviously don't know what to do with their money, but it's inspiring a lot of young people. Um, but I do think all that's part of the push for the breaking down of the family unit. The spurs in people the need to be rich, or get the new sneakers, or um, and less and less. There's less and less wholesome media that talks about how a family can get along and found common interests in living
Mm.
together. And there's less and less wholesome movies and books or conversations, I feel, about how, well, hey, my success story is not based on how I ran away from my parents' issues, but
Mm.
how I sorted them out. Um,
I love that, man. On that same vein, I always remember back, this is years ago, like 15, 16, 17 years ago, I would see reality television and I'd be like, you know, they could actually make this reality television and show people working things out. Like have
yeah,
it so, yeah, of course, little issues come up, but then it shows them both being vulnerable and then working through it and then moving towards something different. I think we could use media like that really, in a really big way, actually, in this time, just displaying vulnerability and communication, I think would go a long fucking way.
yeah,
But yeah, you're right. Everything is all about how I ran away from my responsibilities, created the life for myself, and said, "Go fuck yourself for the rest of the world." Right? Like that is,
yeah,
but it's also reflective. That's the general consciousness, the American dream. That's the general consciousness that unfortunately still dominates the world through colonial efforts. Like that
yeah,
is where people are at. So now, how does
yeah,
that
yeah.
change?
There's a strong sense of insecurity and mistrust, I feel, and like, if I don't take care um, for my people, then who's gonna do it? But it's strange. It's a really strange thing where there's um, blind spots and cognitive dissonance at every corner. Like, I want to be independent. What does that look like in capitalism? It's like I found a 9 to 5 um, and pay for my rent, pay for my food, all that. You know, uh, but who are you working for in the end?
Mm.
Who are you paying your taxes to? So you're dependent, not only dependent on your employer, you're dependent on society. Now, where you get your food, you depend on Coles and Woolworths, um, and then where do you get your petrol? You're dependent on uh, Saudi prince not to raise the prices of petrol. Uh, and then Clive Palmer, you're dependent on Clive Palmer to keep pumping gas out of the soil or stuff like that. So to say that you're truly independent within a capitalist context it's a cognitive dissonance. It's not
Mm.
real. It's not true. We're all very much dependent on big industries at the moment to keep the show going. And so any big man in a suit that tells you, "Oh yeah, I'm a self-made man," is very much still having their society spoon feeding them literally through
A
Coles and
fantasy.
Woolworths. Yeah, it's a fantasy. It's not real. It's based on an idea of success, which is in some way, shape, or form that George, is it George Bezos?
Jeff.
Jeff Bezos. Yeah, don't even know his name, mate. Bill Gates um, is as much of a self-made man as well. He's less of a self-made man than the cave people, mate, who hunted their own food and did all the things that they need to do, make their own tools and stuff like that. Uh, throw Bill Gates in any survival situation and he
Mhm.
will die in 3-4 days.
Mhm.
And ultimately I
That
think
would be an
that's a step.
interesting reality show. So,
What? I would watch it for sure, man. To the death, to the death.
just
uh,
very quickly, because quite a few comments have come in. I just want to give just a little bit of playtime for them. I just want to say that Ayami just said she loves this conversation. They love this conversation, and it's right in tune with the things I've been feeling. Always appreciate these lives, and sorry for sending so many comments. Don't be sorry for that. I love that you're commenting. I haven't been bringing them up because I just don't want to cut Will's flow off. And Astro came in to say, "Love this perspective of independence in a capitalist society." Will, so we've got
nice.
people
Hey,
are
that's good.
people are watching and enjoying your flows, brother. So you keep it up.
Cheers.
Yeah, but yeah. So even the people that would be considered successful in this society, if push came to shove,
Yeah,
would not necessarily be as successful. So it is an illusion in a lot of ways. Correct.
yeah, yeah. It's an illusion based on, I guess, based on value, and in this case, flawed values. You know, how is it that if it comes down to a survival situation, a chicken has more value than a Lamborghini. You know, when it comes to
That's a
survival,
quote. That's a quotable quote, man.
yeah, and, and ultimately, reality in the universe, this is still very much a reality for the whole universe. The chicken is still more valuable than the Lamborghini. Why? So, you know, 200 years ago, what the merchants managed to do is make you believe the opposite of that and be like, you know what, just don't worry about the chicken. Give me the chicken and I'll give you this really shiny rock, you know? And you're like, oh, shiny rock, right? Shiny rock. But it's, and somewhat they've managed to keep going on with this, double down on marketing, double down on media, double down on all these flawed, on these ideas to the point where we have lost insight on what is valuable. We know the price of everything and know the value of nothing. Um, and that's so crazy. How come there's more people spending more time on Netflix than with their families? You know, um, how come are we spending so much time trying to achieve independence, which I do think it's a inherently natural feeling of I think instinctively it makes sense that if we're in a survival situation, I don't want to just depend on your survival skills. I want to be able to have my own survival skills and have my own knowledge,
I
intimate
mean,
knowledge of
perhaps it's
nature.
a misguided impulse, because the impulse is correct, right? That's to
Yeah.
independence, but maybe the method is just incorrect.
Yes. And I guess we're so rigged on the feeling. It's like if a, it's like Bill Gates. There's millions of people that have been telling him his entire life. You're great, you've made it, you're incredible, you're awesome. When you read his book, he, you know, I don't think he spends a second guessing himself. Unfortunately, it's very much you know. Uh, it's the talk of someone who's been propped up to the point where he thinks of himself as there's a god complex a little bit, of it's not grounded in reality. Someone who wants to vaccinate all the cows to stop them from farting and burping is not someone that's grounded within reality. Uh, it's and unfortunately, those are the people we choose as our idols. Don't choose false idols. I think we are today very much so more than ever surrounded by false idols and being constantly nagged at to go and have a look at those false idols. Um, and it's very important. Like, I think it's very hard for anybody to steer clear from that outside influence of what it is that you need to value, what it is that you need to work on, what it is that makes you a valuable person in this society. And the truth of the matter is that if you truly want to be a valuable human in the universe, you're going to have to probably be ridiculed, laughed at, hated even within the boundaries of the society that we live on.
Mm.
Because who controls who controls our culture right now is the marketing teams and the merchants. If you're going to use biblical terms, it's the merchants, corporations, money being what they value the most. But if your philosophy, if your approach to me being a human being and I value the chicken more than the Lamborghini starts, gaining momentum, you're pretty much sure to be shut down at one point. Whether it's, and I'm not saying by a big corporation sending assassin, someone, a hitman, but unfortunately more so by the crowd of people being like, um, you know, keeping you in line, and I think that's what that's what we've unfortunately started doing, is become our own jailers, and to our own prison. Where
I wanted to address this next comment here. Thank you so much, Will. It just says, this is so in line with truth and reconciliation too, which is the push in Canada to return native values and break away from the systems we've created in order to bring, again, Native American or Indigenous values. And individuals boxes and shame, so you don't reach the top because you don't even have equal opportunity. That's like a part of it, is that like you're like, oh, it's equal, but it's not, and the whole idea is that it's all set up and rigged so that people may have value but are in a lower quote unquote demographic, and they actually probably have much more to offer than these other people, but it's not even seen, right? And this, on that same line, I must add, for truth and reconciliation, I did a blanket exercise. If you haven't done one, I highly recommend. The way of life that was destroyed here and that you speak of, in shock. I am sure the genocides in Australia have similar themes, but the destruction, the massacre of such a life you yearn for, I personally feel the yearning. I commend you for taking action. You speak such truth. Tell us more about how, and we've lost the rest of the comment, Ayami, but I just wanted to say that that's a very important point, is that there is a big movement right now for Indigenous values to be reinstated. And of course, Indigenous values are of connection to the earth and connection to each other. So it's actually a really cool time for these progressive movements to happen too, because they're very much in line with a big movement that's happening. And if it's not happening outwardly, it's happening inwardly for many people. So I think it's important just to remember and remind of that too.
Absolutely. I mean, here in Australia, the story of the genocide is incredibly taboo. I'm from France originally, so coming here, with a deeply rooted love for country. I mean, I was crying for this land during the fires. I was crying for this land beforehand when I was back at home. Not even living here. This it's a pure love story for me. Like this, Australia was always my first love. The land itself, and the culture. When I first came here, it was an incredible shock when culture was something that we was very much discussed in France. Still have its taboo and its racism and institution like institutionalized racism and all that kind of stuff. But these things were discussed and were on the table. At least the debates were there. Coming here to Australia, it's incredible to see how backwards, incredibly well taboo things where people don't talk about them. As soon as that uncomfortable truth jumps in, you're led to change the conversation very quickly, even by people who agree with you. Even people who agree that there's been a genocide, even people who agree that it's continuing right now, and the destruction of this land, the destruction of language is continuing, the destruction of generations and of lives. Right now, um, children's lives are being destroyed by this uh, very this dark, uncomfortable truth that's not been digested and worked on by our communities, by our society.
Break in lineage is the big thing, right? The break in lineage that happened for the lost children and the lost generations. That really, and then you could say it's like you kick someone and then you're like, come on, tell us what the truth is then. But they're already hurt, and it's so hard then to even be able to bring it all up, right? It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Iami's question, because we do have about 8 more minutes before I actually have to go. But Iami finished the question and just said, tell us more about how you economically achieve this different lifestyle some of us feel so stuck and impossible to break out of.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So, all right. So I think the first step is to find out what you're passionate about and found value in the work that you do. To continue with Mark's idea, there's a lot of value in a person that's put love into the work they do. So uh, refining that value within yourself for the love of a job well done, not a job that pays well. And then I think people will start seeing. Well, people will see that and pay the fair price for it. Um, but first, we need to find our value ourselves. I'm worth more than $25 an hour. I'm worth more than $35 an hour. I'm worth more than that. And if I accept a job for that, I'm lowering that value within myself. So instead of that, I'll spend time doing something that I find invaluable, like land management or planting a tree. And I might not be paid for it, but the value I found in that is way more than the $35 I would get from cleaning someone else's house, for example. You know, uh, First, that's, I guess, regaining a sense of value in your life. The second part is recognizing that I think finding allies. Finding allies is really important, and in that teamwork is one thing that rugby's taught me is that we might not have the same skills, we might not be in this coming from the same place, we might not be as fast as each other. We might not be working at the same pace at all and be working on totally different sides of the pitch. But most human beings, like in rugby, have the same goal. Score try, in rugby, but most human beings have the same goal, which is thriving, right? We don't want to just be, uh, you know, churning, working hard, and then not seeing any results for it, and not obtaining any yield, and storing some of that yield too, and some of that work for later. Uh, Nobody wants to work the 9 to 5 just to simply barely make dinner and then wake up the same next morning and do the same thing. So um, realizing that we all ultimately down deep within have the same goal, even if some people are not able to say it or recognize it, or have recognized it in themselves. Um, if you talk, if you listen to people deep within, I think all of us are calling for connection, for intimacy, uh, and for a sense of purpose, and something that makes us feel valuable to the community.
Mhm.
Uh, and when we take those things together, then we can start building bridge with the partners, the teammates that we create, that we found, uh, and start making a plan with those people on how can we then combine our skills, combine our time and our energy, um, to make those dreams happen.
Mhm.
Some of the times the dream are totally different, but the context is the same. It's like you might want to start writing a book, and I might want to start doing art, for example. But we all want to live in paradise. I don't want to live under a bridge, and you don't want to live in an apartment, block, for example. It turns out we all kind of want to live in paradise. So why don't we make that happen? Let's all find paradise together, and then we can go on trying to find what niche skills we want to do. So uh, to answer Ian, uh, I think the first step would be try to work out what you want to do in your life and what you're passionate about. Don't worry about how much money you're making out of it, but what do you want to do? Find value in that, so that your partners and your teammates can find value also. So you don't find value in what you do and who you are as a person, it'll be very hard for people to find value in who you are, and what you do as a person. And not because you don't lack value, but because you can't see it in yourself yet. So if you found that passion, found that thing that you're really passionate about that moves you and people and mountains, and then found the teammates that will uh, ultimately, like you've come to the conclusion are actually working towards the same thing as you, which is living in a beautiful place where you can all thrive. That's the second step. The third step and last step is trying to find the land and the place. But there are so many farmers all around the world that are looking for help, that are looking for some from company, that are looking for that team, exactly the same team that you're looking for in yourself. And so, on both spectrums, there's the old farmer that has been on that land for a long time and that needs your inspiration, that needs your energy and your passion. And then there's you on the other side that needs their land, you know? And so, the key right now and what I'm trying to work on is try to connect and make that bridge between the people that are looking for land and the people that have land, but they're like, we need community, we need people to come here, we need young people to stick around and not go to the big city and the big smoke. Uh, but gosh, well, you don't even need to buy your own land. I know here, Ian, if you want to come to Nabiac, dozens of people that would actually have you and host you, and let you build their home on their property for the sole sake that you could give them company, and that you're a good person, and that they need just to feel like there's a nice neighbor just across their gardens, on the other side of their gardens.
I'm going to have to wrap this up just because we have to go pick up a car and do a thing. But man, thank you
Yes, mate.
so fucking much. Thank you so fucking much. I think that was the perfect place to end, is that there are people that want you to come, and actually Will wants you to come to his farm.
Yeah.
Not just Miami. It's like it's a beautiful community, and that open-heartedness of come one, come all is very, very real, man. And I the minute when I first got there, you said, "Hey, welcome home," and I've heard that before in many contexts, but the actual resonance of your heart that you were giving in that moment, I felt was very, very profound. So I do have to go, and what I'll do is, if anyone wants to connect with Will, you can connect to him through the Facebook that I've tagged, and that's probably the best way to connect. But if you are in Australia and you want to come check out a permaculture farm that has a beautiful, thriving community, it could be that we're there at the same time too. But please, please, please contact Will, and please do this. I want to say thank you so much. And Astro, I'm sorry I wasn't able to put your last comment up. It's just a timing thing. But Astro, thank you so much for participating so strongly. Miami, thank you so much for participating and asking and leading a lot of the questions. And Cassandra, thank you for commenting too. I really appreciate having people in here really interactive like this. It means the absolute world. And thank you, Will, so much for going into such detail on so many different subjects, man. I fucking love you so much.
I love you too. I'll see you soon, eh?
I'll see you soon physically. Yeah.
Yeah.